Hello, this is Yogeshwar, and I'm here today to discuss the very important topic of Saturn transit, which is happening on November the 2nd, 2014. And in our earlier videos, we did discuss about the transit of Saturn, how it's going to affect the ascendants of Aries and Taurus, and the moon signs of Aries and Taurus. And this video will discuss about the effects of the Saturn transit, which is happening on November the 2nd, 2014, for the ascendant of Gemini and for the moon sign of Gemini. As I've already discussed in our earlier videos, that the ancient texts and the scriptures describe that the transits should be looked at from the moon sign and not from the ascendant. That's what the scriptures say. Gochara, which means transit in Sanskrit, says that has to be looked at from the moon sign. So more importantly, people with the moon sign of Gemini should look at this video with a little more in detail. However, I will recommend that people with the ascendant of Gemini also should look at this video, how the ascendant of Gemini is going to be impacted by the transit of Saturn, which is happening for 2.5 years, approximately 2.5 years, on November the 2nd, 2014. So, as you know, that Saturn currently is transiting in the zodiac sign of Libra, and it will be moving into the zodiac sign of Scorpio. As you can see on the screen, the arrow points that for the ascendants and moon sign, and once again I'm repeating, both the ascendant of Gemini and the moon sign of Gemini should look at this video, because it's going to impact both of them, although more so in the case of the moon sign of Gemini, meaning which that if you look at your birth chart, your natal chart, or your Rashi chart, and if you see your moon sitting in the sign of Gemini, you have a moon sign of Gemini. And for them, Saturn is going to be moving into its 6th house, because its 6th house would fall under the zodiac sign of Scorpio, which is happening for 2.5 years. So how is it going to impact how's the transit going to impact people with the Gemini ascendant and moon sign? As you can see here on the screen, the 6th house placement of Saturn, which will happen, and Saturn will be transiting the 6th house for approximately 2.5 years, will be a very good placement, because Saturn in the 6th house is considered to be auspicious. Why? Because the 6th house represents the house of diseases, the house of enemies, and the house of debts. So once Saturn moves into the 6th house for Gemini ascendant and Gemini moon sign people, it will give all-round happiness in terms of diseases, meaning which it will remove diseases. It'll give happiness in terms of debt, meaning which it'll remove debt, and it'll give happiness in terms of enemies, which means that it will remove enemies from their lives. I don't use the word destroy enemies. Many astrologers use that. Destruction is a very, very negative word, what I think, but yes, it'll remove enemies from your lives, which means which they may not be destroyed, but they will move away from you, which will bring you happiness. Now, if you see the 6th house and Saturn's placement from the 6th house is also going to be aspecting the 8th house, which is the house of longevity, and that house also, because of the aspect of Saturn into the 8th house, will give happiness in terms of longevity, because the scriptures describe the 8th house placement of Saturn as good. So in terms of longevity, long life, it will be good for people. Again, I'm saying both for Gemini ascendants as well as Gemini moon signs. Now, as far as the 7th house aspect of Saturn is concerned, Saturn will be aspecting the 12th house for Gemini ascendants and Gemini moon signs, which also is a good placement in terms of the 12th house represents the house for moksha. And so from that point of view also, it will be considered auspicious. The 10th house aspect of Saturn will be in the 3rd house for Gemini ascendant and Gemini moon sign people, which also is a good placement for Saturn as per the ancient scriptures. So overall, I would say that for Gemini ascendant and Gemini moon sign people, this transit, this 2.5 years transit of Saturn will be auspicious, will be favorable, and will bring all-around happiness for, once again, both for the moon sign and for the ascendant. And like we know that Saturn is a planet which has been given a responsibility by the divine to judge people and to reward people and to punish people based on their karma and past deeds. For Gemini ascendants, it is here for 2.5 years to reward them for their good deeds. So it's a good news for them, and hopefully it'll be a great time for the next 2.5 years. From the point of view of Saturn, we are just talking from the point of view of Saturn. There may be other things which may affect this 2.5 years for Gemini ascendant and Gemini moon sign people, meaning which they may be in a particular dasha, they may be in a particular sub period, or bhukti as some people call it, or a pratyantar dasha as some people call it. They may have the effects of other planets transiting as well. So just do not base your 2.5 years on the Saturn's transit only. But yes, from a point of view of Saturn, it will be a very, very favorable time for both Gemini ascendant and Gemini moon sign people. So hopefully you enjoyed this video, and I will recommend please subscribe to my channel and check out my website. There is